Hey everyone, I keep getting asked to do these weird build videos, and yes, even though Korea is now a for fun region after Worlds, I know I looked through all 300 Challenger players and found the weirdest builds that actually work and win games. As always, these work because these guys actually know how to play the build, so please try these out in normals first because most of them will need some practice before you can stomp with them. All of these profiles will be listed down below from Mobalytics, by the way, so if you want some more information, then feel free to go and look them up. We're starting this off with one that I almost couldn't believe, but what if I told you that you could get to Challenger in Korea by buying Warmogs on Kassadin? Not only that, but taking Exhaust and Barrier as your summoner spells and Unsealed Spellbook as your keystone. Ridiculous, right? But here he is, and mostly this is top lane, by the way. Sometimes mid, but not normally. The build is going to vary, but it is tier and then into some defense. So versus AD, it is normally Frozen Heart, and versus AP, it is an Abyssal Mask. Archangels is your second item most of the time, then after that is legitimately a Warmogs, and the only damage item you're going to build is the Archangels, which is also a shield, so kind of half and half. His damage is actually quite good though for what this is. Like, he is still around the top of the damage charts by the end of the game. He also actually maxes his E first as well. It's a better wave clear, it lets you push more, and it is a lot of damage when it's maxed out, but it is also a 90% slow rank 5 instead of 50%. If you don't know what a 90% slow feels like, you definitely will when this hits you in the face, and you won't really be able to move at all. Runes, by the way, are Free Boots, Biscuits, and Tonic for the lane phase, and then Transcendence for cooldown reduction and Gathering Storm for later, and actually even taking more cooldown reduction in his stat shards as well. The idea behind this is to rely on his pretty good base damage to be able to kill people and just kill people slower, but you die a lot slower as well. It's like an extremely mobile disruptor who's just going to annoy everybody and not die. You keep slowing everyone, you deal good damage, and being almost impossible to lock down, and when you finally get locked down, they won't even kill you anyway. It's also with Unsealed Spellbook, which surprisingly kind of makes this even better. You can swap it out for TP, for Flash, Ignite, whatever you need for fights, right? But obviously Barrier and Exhaust makes you even more of a nightmare to kill in the first place. A second one is a pick that I noticed a lot of junglers in Korean Challenger using, Riven. Most of them go Aftershock. They take Shield Bash, Bone Plating, and Free Boots with cooldown reduction for the rest of it in Inspiration. You can also run Conqueror if you want to. I only saw one person doing this, but it's going to be more damage or just be a lot easier to kill. Aftershock makes you live a lot longer in fights because you're not taking that much damage for the first 2.5 seconds as you jump in, and Riven doesn't really need that long to kill you either. Riven Jungle surprisingly has pretty good farm times. Actually has crowd control and a shield, so she's going to avoid some damage. You won't be taking as much in the first place. You have good damage to actually kill stuff, and then she is basically just a Riven. Find the enemy jungler, fight them, get crab, like flash in and engage a fight, pull off some ganks with a stun or knockups, and then you have your own damage to follow up. The build is normally warrior, cleaver, and spear together, so it's quite a lot of health as you'll notice, and AD as well together, which means you won't be dying as fast. It's not full damage like we normally have. The playstyle is kind of like a mix of farm and ganking, but kind of leaning towards the farming a bit more. You don't gank like a Lee Sin, but you're not hard farming like a Master Yi either. I was surprised, honestly, finding a really good number of these junglers using her. Some of them seem to main it, some of them whip it out every few games, some of them just have it as like a little pocket pick, but it's actually pretty good. Next up, we're off to the top lane. Conqueror territory this patch, right? But one I've seen a lot of is Hecarim. This is Ignite, Teleport, and that's relatively normal, but the Conqueror is apparently tearing it up now. I'll link to Cuvée down below who is doing this, who is a pro player as well, but there are quite a few of them. Rune-wise, we have Triumph, and we also have Tenacity, which, by the way, is so good to stop getting kite around. Merc Treads is 30%, and this rune itself is also just 30%, so he takes this and then buys Tabbies, basically getting the best of both of them. The build is normally Trinity Force, but straight into a Righteous Glory after that. So you grab them both and you just run at people, doing insane damage, and nobody can escape you. Your Q is also a really good way to stack up your Conqueror with everything else in your kit combined together. So it's active a lot of the time. Your melee as well, so you get 8 seconds for the stack, so it doesn't really disappear. You already have some healing, some good healing from your W as well, so you heal for even more when you dive in now with Conqueror and have the AD, the true damage bonus to make you more deadly. This next one is sort of actually legit. Like, it's less weird, but Conqueror Lee Sin isn't played that much over here, but it's used a ton in Korea, especially by the really good Lee Sin players, if that makes sense. So they're the ones who are whipping it out the most. Most of them also use a really ham AD build. The one I'm showing you is Tarzan, who plays for Griffin, and he runs Warrior, Cleaver, Dustblade, and Guardian Angel, and then even more lethality normally. If you haven't felt AD Lee Sin before, it actually does so much damage, it's insane, but it's easily punished if you mess up. You really won't last that long. Does that actually matter matter if you kill them with your ultimate and your Q though? Probably not. His runes are interesting though. So Triumph and then either attack speed or the tenacity we just talked about, but then into domination with Taste of Blood and Ravenous Hunter. I'm guessing the reason with this build you take it is it adds to the healing even more from Conqueror, kind of like supplements that, and also Ravenous will heal for a ton if you stack that much AD. The build is a bit weird, but it's actually just really strong. Like Conqueror stacks almost straight away with the abilities and the auto attacks, and then you're just having loads of damage. So next up is another trend that I've kind of noticed where Thalia is being picked up a lot more again, but mostly as a bot laner. There are some junglers, some supports, and even a few mid laners who do it, but I see most with heal, Dark Harvest, and bot lane. You're a little bit safer with a support there. You can flip people into combo and hard punish melee supports or shorter range AD carries. If you combine that with some kind of damage or crowd control from the support, then it's not difficult to get kills in this lane and snowball out of control. You have good wave clear, so you can push, you can poke down as well, but people seriously underestimate how much damage you can actually put out if you hit that flip. Even when these people lose playing Thalia, they are topping the damage charts of the entire game. It's kind of crazy when she can also burst. So for runes, we go Dark Harvest for bot lane. Normally, it's easier to stack up versus two people, so that's kind of why. And then you have Cheap Shot, you have your Ravenous, but also Presence of Mind secondary in Precision. This is the one that restores 20% of your mana, but also 10% of your ultimate cooldown on a takedown, so you can roam even more. You can join like mid lane fights with your ultimate. You can even cut off the bot lane so they can't run away like for a gank or something, or even get back to lane with this thing in the first place. There are a lot of different ways you can use it. This particular guy actually does a bit of a weird build as well, running Ludens into Proto Bell, I guess increasing the burst combo and wave clear even more. Next up is a proper weird one though. Rengar top lane with the new Conqueror or Grasp, but building a Trinity Force first every single game. An example build would be like Trinity, Visage, Zhonya's, Guardian Angel, stuff like that. It's kind of like League's best kept secret build. I say that because this Bruiser Zhonya's Rengar is amazing. It is so strong because its W has an AP ratio and it can wait for cooldowns while golden. Obviously, a lot of people don't play this, which is why it doesn't really get much attention, but Trinity Force thrown into that as well makes a lot of sense. You're going to be able to weave your Sheen procs in between abilities and autos, and it's a huge amount of burst damage. Visage has the synergy with his heal as well, some magic resist, which is great, bit of health even, and with all of that, it makes stacking up Conqueror a lot easier. When you aren't running a full AD Dustblade one-shot build, it means you're going to duel a bit more, right? And that is where Conqueror really comes in. You stack it up, you give more AD, but you also start to heal yourself. Imagine if you're juking around in bushes top lane especially, which is why I'm mentioning that. You have this active while running about, kiting people, waiting for cooldowns, and all the time doing more damage. In teamfights, you still do stupid amounts of damage anyway because you have built some AD. You nuke towers down, which is really good, but you're also way more difficult to focus down and actually kill in the first place. Another pretty weird one that I noticed was Kleptomancy Zillion. I saw this a few times, but this one is actually top lane as well most of the time. Against melee matchups, he can easily abuse them though. Bomb, auto a few times, you can even slow them, then auto attack them for the Klepto stacks, and they can't run away. The idea is that you get a bunch more gold early into the game trading, and it's not that difficult to farm either, so good CS and Kleptomancy together is a much faster build. He normally rushes a Hextech GLP2, but it's kind of clever. The slow from that makes landing a double bomb relatively easy, and it can do a lot of damage when you stack some AP behind it. I've never seen anyone do this part, but he actually gets a Rod of Ages after the GLP. Now this takes 10 minutes to stack, right? So getting its second item is not normal at all. Most of the time you have to rush it or not buy it, but he normally gets it around 15 to 20 minutes into the game because he's running Kleptomancy. So that is how he gets away with it. Right, now in case you're still hungry for a bit more, I've got some dessert for you. Some more that are weird, but not as weird as those ones. First up, we have a Challenger Sona player who apparently hasn't heard how good support items are on a champion because she never builds any. A typical game looks like Salt Boots, a Dark Seal, Oblivion Orb for more spell pen, Sheen, and even a Medjai's. Now sometimes she will buy a Sensor, but that's pretty much it, and that's not even often, honestly. It's most likely going to be a Lichbane. The funny thing about this is that with Sorks and with the Orb as well, it is 33 magic pen, and most AD carries don't have that much magic resist, so you're basically doing true damage to them. It's a bit weird, but this Sona build can probably solo the enemy AD carry for a good while in the game, especially early game, and it's actually quite difficult to play against. Another thing that I've seen a fair amount of people trying is Conqueror on Calista. So Calista is actually relatively popular in Challenger at the moment after her buffs. Most of them are playing Halo Blades, honestly, because it's better early game, but I've seen this a bit too, and it does actually make a lot of sense. If you have 5 auto attacks, you have 5 stacks of Rend, and then you press your E, it does 10% true damage, and it also heals you. The synergy is actually really good. Plus, you even get more AD, which makes the Rend do more damage in the first place. It's not going to be as good as Halo Blade's early game, but it will definitely stack up during a game and make your teamfight potential just even better than before. This one you might have heard about, but Jarvan's support with Avery was a thing quite a while ago because they buffed his E, right? His flag, so that now it gives up to 30% attack speed. Because the flag is buffing people though with the attack speed, it also puts Avery on anybody with the buff, which gives them a shield, right? But it can keep bouncing on that person as well. The flag does 240 damage, but it's also got an 80% AP ratio, so it can put out some decent damage. This isn't normally full AP, you can do it if you want to, but it's normally about buffing your team. It's giving them like Knight's Vow or Zeke's or even an Ardent Sensor. That sounds really weird, but because Avery is giving a shield to people, it applies a sensor buff, and then you've got an even bigger attack speed buff on top of that. Nocturne mid is still a really strong pick in Korean Challenger, and it's so weird. Lethal Tempo, Berserker Greaves, Duskblade Cleaver, even Spear of Sojin. The idea is that you have a ton of damage. Your wave clear is amazing though with your passive and your Q, so you push and you roam. Also remember that pretty much every single mage in the game had their wave clear nerfed, so Nocturne really stands out because it's so much faster. Your ultimate is almost like the ultimate roaming tool as well, and that early into the game like will do a stupid amount of damage because you have way more AD than a normal jungle Nocturne. The Spear of Sojin on Nocturne is also something that I've noticed way more on jungle as well. You ultimate in, you auto attack, and then you have more fears and more damage from your Q. Plus, it's just cooldown reduction, so you have more ults in the first place and some extra health. So Quinn is a champion that we've kind of forgotten about a lot recently. She was pretty popular, then she got nerfed, and now we've forgotten. But there is a guy, 60% win rate, and plays her with Conqueror. It makes sense because it's not a lethality, go in and one-shot someone kind of build. It is Blade the Ruined King into Phantom Dancer, so it's way more damage over time. If you're not going to one-shot somebody, then that means you have more time, especially from range, to actually stack up Conqueror in the first place. You can still roam around the map. That's the entire point of Quinn, just like before. You move into a crit build as well, so you don't fall off, and it's actually doing really well. So let me know which of these are your favorites from today. Thank you very much for watching until the very end. But for now, I will leave you with the robots.